They say the pain of losing a child never really goes away. But for me, the pain wasn't just in the loss. It was in realizing who stood by me during that grief and who didn't. The moment I found out my newborn daughter had passed away from sudden complications, I felt like my world cracked open. I held her tiny fingers in the hospital, silent tears streaming down my face as nurses offered words of comfort that barely registered. My fiancé, David, held me, broken too, but it was the silence from my parents that truly shattered me. I remember calling them from the hospital. My voice was shaking, my eyes swollen from crying. "Mom, Dad, she's gone." There was a pause. Then Mom said flatly, "Oh, honey, that's awful, but you know your brother's backyard barbecue is this weekend. The whole family is flying in from out of state. We've been planning it for months. It would be too hard to reschedule now." I thought I hadn't heard her right. "Mom, it's her funeral, my daughter. Your granddaughter." "I know," she replied like I was overreacting. "But life has to move on. A baby that was only here a few hours. It's not the same as losing someone you've known for years. Besides, this BBQ is for your brother's promotion. He's worked so hard. This is a huge moment for him." Dad didn't even get on the phone. I was stunned. I couldn't process it. My baby was dead, and my own parents chose burgers and beer over burying their grandchild. The day of the funeral, I walked slowly behind the tiny white casket with David at my side. It was raining, soft and steady, like even the sky was mourning with me. Every seat at the chapel was filled. Friends, co-workers, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years came to pay their respects. But two people were missing, two people whose absence burned a hole in the pews. My parents weren't there. Later that evening, I opened Instagram and saw it. A photo of my parents posing beside my brother in front of a smoking grill, drinks in hand, everyone smiling. The caption read, "Celebrating success and family. Grateful to be surrounded by love today." BBQ with the best. I dropped my phone. Grief became rage, and rage quickly turned into something else, resolve. My parents had always made it clear that I was the afterthought. My brother, Aaron, was the golden child, the straight A student, the college athlete, the charming executive. I, on the other hand, was the sensitive one, the artist, the one who made things complicated by choosing a different path. They'd never understood me, but I thought, at the very least, the death of their grandchild might soften them, show them what really mattered. Instead, they showed me exactly who they were. I stopped speaking to them. I ignored their casual follow-up message 3 days later. "Hope you're feeling better. The BBQ was great. Aaron says hi." I didn't respond. I didn't explain. I didn't ask why. I just disappeared from their radar. But while I stayed silent, I wasn't idle. Because what they didn't know was that I was building something they would one day have to see, whether they wanted to or not. Grief left a crater in my soul, but from that dark, hollow space, something new began to take root. Determination. I had lost everything that mattered, and yet, I was still here. My daughter hadn't even had a chance to see the world, and I owed it to her to build something meaningful from the pieces I had left. In the quiet aftermath of the funeral, I resigned from my job. I couldn't sit in a cubicle anymore pretending my world hadn't ended. David, my fiancé, supported me completely. "Whatever you need to do," he said, "do it. Just don't give up." And I didn't. I poured my sorrow into something I had only ever dreamed of, a non-profit foundation for grieving mothers. I named it Everlenna, after the name we had chosen for our daughter. I used every cent of the insurance payout and my modest savings to launch it from scratch. We offered grief counseling, hospital advocacy, burial cost assistance, and postpartum mental health services. At first, it was just me, a rented desk at a co-working space, and tear-stained spreadsheets. But within months, it began to grow. Word spread. A local journalist did a feature on the foundation. Donations began pouring in. Grieving mothers from all walks of life started sharing their stories. Volunteers signed up. Grief therapists offered their time for free. By the end of that year, Everlenna had its own office, a 5-person team, and a waiting list of women who finally felt like someone saw them. And still, not a word from my parents. They didn't even know what I was doing. Or maybe they didn't care. Occasionally, I'd see their Facebook posts, smiling at Aaron's company gala, sipping cocktails by the pool, vacationing in Tuscany. My name was never mentioned. It was like I never existed. Until one day, I did. About 14 months after the funeral, Everlenna was nominated for a National Humanitarian Award. I never expected to win. It was the kind of recognition reserved for large-scale organizations with decades of work behind them. But when my name was called and I stepped onto that stage in a fitted black dress with my hand clutching the award in disbelief, I heard the crowd rise in a standing ovation. And then, everything changed. The photo of me standing at that podium went viral. News sites started requesting interviews. A best-selling author posted a clip of my acceptance speech with the caption, "This woman's pain became her purpose. Watch until the end." And just like that, my parents remembered I existed. They called. For the first time in nearly 2 years, my mom left a voicemail. "Sweetheart, we saw you on the news. We're so proud of you. Let's talk soon. Maybe we can catch up over dinner." Dinner. They skipped my daughter's funeral for barbecue ribs, and now they wanted dinner. I ignored the call. I wasn't ready to open that door. But revenge, the quiet kind, the kind that simmers rather than screams, was already writing itself. You see, my brother Aaron was preparing to launch a major tech startup. It was a family-backed venture, funded in part by my parents' friends and a few silent partners. One of those partners was a well-known female philanthropist in the grief and wellness space. And guess who she'd recently begun supporting? Everlenna. When her team called me to discuss collaboration, I played it professionally. We talked outreach, mutual support campaigns, joint grant opportunities. She liked me. She liked what I stood for. And before long, she invited me to sit on the board of her parent foundation, which meant I now had insight into every major investment she touched, including Aaron's. For weeks, I kept silent. I watched from behind the curtain as my parents bragged about Aaron's upcoming historic IPO and how proud they were to have raised such brilliant children. I watched them take credit for everything but the child they had thrown away. Then, 2 weeks before Aaron's official product launch party, I made a move. I didn't crash the party. I didn't show up to embarrass them. I didn't post anything vindictive online. I simply emailed the philanthropist board and voiced ethical concerns about associating our brand with a company whose leadership had made disparaging comments about grief support being a pity industry. That wasn't even a lie. I had heard Aaron say it once at a family gathering, and I remembered it well. The funding was quietly pulled the next day. The launch collapsed without major investors. Aaron didn't go public. My parents were furious, confused, but had no idea where the fallout had come from. I watched from a distance as they scrambled, blaming everyone but themselves. And then, I sent them flowers. Just a plain white bouquet with a single card. It read, "Everlenna sends her love, in memory of the little girl you never came to bury." That's when my mom called again, this time sobbing. She begged me to come to dinner. Said they'd do anything to make it right. She said she realized they had made a mistake. But I wasn't looking for an apology anymore, because I had already given them a memorial, one they would never forget. A year after I sent them the flowers, I stood backstage at a conference center in San Diego, preparing to deliver the keynote speech for an international mental health summit. Everlenna had gone global. We'd opened chapters in 3 countries. We'd helped over 12,000 women, funded hundreds of funeral services, and created safe spaces in hospitals for grieving mothers who used to suffer in silence. That morning, while I rehearsed my notes, I received an email from the event organizer. It simply said, "We approved 2 guests you didn't register. They claim to be your parents." I froze. It had been 2 years, 2 full years of silence, then betrayal, then regret. And now they were here? I had no time to process it. I had to step on stage. The crowd was huge. The lights were warm on my face. I could barely see their faces, but I spoke anyway, about grief, motherhood, and how love, when lost, becomes fuel. I told the audience how Everlenna was born in the absence of comfort. I didn't mention my parents by name, but I spoke about them. About how some people skip the moments that matter most, not realizing those moments become the foundation of everything you build after. By the time I ended, there was silence, and then an eruption of applause. I stepped off stage, heart pounding. And there they were, my mother in a floral scarf she used to wear to church, my father looking smaller than I remembered. She reached for me, tears trembling in her eyes. "Sweetheart, please, just hear us out." I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I simply nodded toward a quiet corner backstage and let them speak. They apologized, profusely, desperately. They said they'd been lost in the wrong kind of pride, that they believed Aaron needed them more, that they thought I'd be strong enough on my own. "But we were wrong," my father whispered. "So wrong." I listened, and I let them speak. Then I pulled out something I'd brought with me every time I gave a speech, a photo, the only one I had from the hospital. Me, holding Everlenna's tiny, lifeless hand. I placed it gently in front of them. "This," I said, voice shaking, "is the moment you skipped for ribs and beer." My mother's sobs cracked the air. They begged to be part of my life again, to support the foundation, to come to the next ceremony, to be present. I took a breath. "You can come," I said softly, "but only as volunteers. You'll wear the shirts, do the work, pack grief kits, drive the vans, no spotlight, no 'we're the parents of the founder.' If you really want to honor her, you'll serve." There was silence, and then, slowly, my father nodded. "We'll start Monday." And they did. 2 months later, I watched my parents, my once proud, dismissive parents, gently hand a folded memory blanket to a sobbing mother outside a hospital. No cameras, no applause, just humanity. And I knew then. This was the justice grief deserved. They would never forget what they missed. But more importantly, they would never miss again, and neither would I. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation. It's turning the absence of love into something that saves others. It's building a life so full of purpose that even the people who broke you are forced to become part of its repair. That was the story of Everlenna. That was the story of the little girl they didn't come to bury, but who changed the world anyway.